he might be declaring the so-called ceasefire in order to prevent Ukraine from conducting military operations before the so-called victory day or during, because it might show weakness of Putin, weakness of Russia, and weakness of Russian propaganda and military machine.
I think, first of all, let's start with a reaction from you to this apparent declaration by Putin of a ceasefire from the 8th to the 11th of May. He says Ukraine should follow the example. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, we know that when Putin says something or promises something, in reality, he does absolutely the opposite. And we had it many times. And I would be very cautious because, you know, it means that we can expect any kind of provocations before the so-called victory day in Russia. Second, we're not talking about real genuine ceasefire here, because even technically, from legal point of view, to have a ceasefire, you need to have bilateral agreement on ceasefire. And unilateral declaration is not real ceasefire. So even technically, we cannot talk about ceasefire. Third, I believe that it's part of Putin's propaganda, because, you know, in Russia, he has always been using Victory Day as a big kind of propagandistic celebration. And I suspect that he might be declaring the so-called ceasefire in order to prevent Ukraine from conducting military operations before the so-called Victory Day or during, because it might show weakness of Putin, weakness of Russia, and weakness of Russian propaganda and military machine. So I'm sure
I suppose
that...
yeah. I was going to say,
Oleksandr,
I think one of the crucial things with all of this is that Ukraine surely at this point must work so as not to appear unwilling to engage in any ceasefire, whoever proposes it.
Well, as it was before, I assume that Ukraine, I mean the president, might make a sort of statement that we should judge by the actions, not by words of Putin. If he is serious about ceasefire, he can do it anytime. He can just stop fighting, stop bombing, stop killing Ukrainian civilian population. But the thing is that I'm absolutely certain that history will repeat itself as many, many times before, and there will be no ceasefire. Putin will continue to fight against Ukrainian troops. He will continue to bomb Ukrainian cities. He will continue to kill civilians. I have absolutely no doubt about that.
In terms of President Trump's approach to all of this, of course, he sat down with President Zelensky just before the Pope's funeral in St. Peter's Basilica over the course of the weekend, which many have interpreted as President Trump responding to the last person to whom he speaks, in that case, President Zelensky. President Trump then took to Truth Social to change tone on President Putin of Russia. Do you agree there was a change of tone? What is your interpretation of President Trump's approach towards Russia and its leader right now?
I have noticed a certain change of tone, not a decisive yet, but some change, because it gives some hope, honestly speaking. And I believe that our President Zelensky, he said that it might be historic meeting, but you know, we have a long way to go, because yeah, from my kind of position, from my perspective, I also see that President Trump depends on the last conversation. And unfortunately, in his entourage are people who are trying to push pro-Russian narratives about strategic partnership with Russia and so on. There are, of course, people who understand what's going on and who are trying to support Ukraine because they understand strategic meaning and importance for the United States of Ukraine. But of course, I'm very careful about this change of tone, because so far, President Trump has been using, so to speak, more sticks with regard to Ukraine and carrots with regard to Russia and Putin. And I hope that President Trump will become more realistic. But you know, what is really important about this meeting, that the only key to mutual understanding between President Trump and President Zelensky is to have such direct contacts, such face-to-face conversation. Only then these kind of conversations and dialogue can help to remove obstacles and misunderstandings between both presidents.
Yeah. It also strikes me that that meeting took place without anyone else there, including television cameras, which I wonder if that was a key part of why there may have been some sort of progress. As you say, perhaps it's not a decisive change of tone at this point. And on that note, Oleksandr, with all this conversation today about a ceasefire, it remains the point that America seemingly has not withdrawn any of the elements of its peace plan that Europeans and Ukrainians find so objectionable, and with good cause as well. I do wonder if there may be movement on that from the Ukrainian side at any point. Could Ukraine accept a de facto Russian occupation of Crimea rather than recognition of Russia having this territory, owning this territory? Could there be some sort of compromise to be made there?
The truth is that it's absolutely impossible from legal point of view, because we cannot change our constitution, and there are no legal mechanisms in our constitution and our legal system how to cede the territories of Ukraine. It's absolutely out of the question.
But could there be something, Oleksandr, sorry to interrupt on that point, I just wonder if there could be something to be said for that situation being a continuation of how things have been in Crimea for the last 10 years. So actually, in some ways, it could be said nothing would change.
Well, we understand one thing, that right now we don't have enough weaponry to take back, to deoccupy Crimea, but we'll definitely do it in the future. And we also don't rule out that it can be done not necessarily by military hand, but by diplomatic and political means. So we believe that sooner or later Crimea will return, and it might happen by using diplomatic and political means, as our president has said.
One of the issues that is still at stake here is the consideration on the future security situation for Ukraine, certainly, and for the rest of Europe. There is a belief, I think, underpinning all of this, that there is an existential fight in all of this for survival. But there is a horrible contradiction in that the allies are looking to one another in order to secure that long-term peace, and, as we say, the security of Ukraine, Europe, and even further afield as well. How are you interpreting the support from European allies, which seems to be at something of an impasse?
Well, first of all, we are tremendously grateful for all support and assistance provided to Ukraine, which helped us to survive and which helps us to save our people, civilian population, including women and children. We are grateful, absolutely sincerely and profoundly. But at the same time, we need support to continue to survive. And you know what is crucially important for us at the moment is to have strong leadership of all free world democratic states. But if, for example, the United States is not ready yet to assume this role of the leader of the free world, then we can rely on Europe. And we strongly believe that such leadership can be provided by the UK, by France, and by Germany acting together. And I believe in such strong European leadership. This is the key issue right now for security in Europe, for peace in Europe, and for restoration of international law.
How should European leaders respond to President Putin's announcement of a ceasefire? What is the appropriate response from the likes of President Macron of France, or indeed Prime Minister Starmer of the UK?
Well, it's very easy to prove whether or not Putin is sincere. As I said, I absolutely don't trust him, don't believe. But, you know, I believe that Western leaders, European leaders, they can say very simply that we'll be judging by your actions, whether you are sincere about your proposal. If you, in fact, if you really stop fighting, it will mean that you are serious about this ceasefire proposal. If not, it means that we need to put maximum pressure, to increase pressure on Russia to make it to observe international law.
Oleksandr, it's so good to speak to you. Thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.